Oh yeah. A little bit of a tight squeeze. Okay. Look at that right there. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a C5 Z06. My C5 Z06. It's very quiet, but this is an LS6 5.7 liter. That sounds pretty good. As you guys know, I sold my Mustang a few months ago, and not having a V8 with a manual transmission or a V8 period in the garage just wasn't acceptable. So I had to go out and get one. Now we take a step inside the car. It's not a new car by any means. This car is 21 years old, but it has this right there, a manual transmission. Now I'm fairly certain this is something you guys weren't expecting whatsoever, and honestly if you told me about a week and a half ago that I was buying this car, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But there's a method behind what seems to be my madness. And let's talk a little bit about this car, and let's talk a little bit about the Z06 just in general, and why I decided to go buy one of these with the money that I had from selling my Mustang. Now this right here is a 2002 Z06. 2002, 3, and 4 are the most desirable Z06s out of the bunch. The 2001s make less horsepower, the 2004s tend to have a little bit more issues from what I'm seeing, but regardless, these 3 years are the best years of the Z06. Now, this car is silver. I was really looking for a black one, but this one came up at the right price, the right mileage, condition, everything, that it made too much sense not to go for this one. Now, in my opinion, the Z06 is undervalued at the moment. Now, I talked about this in the past, that you can pick these cars up for like $25,000, and I picked this one up somewhere around that price point, and that makes almost no sense to me, because automatic non-fixed roof coupe cars, which are the base models, sell for like $17,000 sometimes with like 50,000 miles on them. This car has 34,000 original miles on the car, no issues whatsoever, runs and drives perfectly fine, and is only a few $1,000s more than what a base model is. And there's a pretty big difference between the base models and the Z06s, so it doesn't really make too much sense. Talking to some of my friends, some Corvette people, everyone comes to the same consensus that even though they've appreciated significantly pre-COVID market, these cars were a little bit under 20K, but they still have their way to go, and it's a car that's going to continue to appreciate. But also at the moment, just with the winter market, these cars are trading for $5,000 or $6,000 less than what they should be in a few months from now. Financially speaking, this car is what I think to be a fantastic buy at the moment, which is why I put my money where my mouth is, and I went out and bought the car. Pop in the hood, you don't really pop it, you kind of just lift it, and well, there it is, the 5.7 liter LS. This is the first LS that I've ever owned, not the first LS I've driven, but it's pretty darn clean under here, to be honest with you. And well, that's the heart of the beast, and you realize how tucked back this is. And also, if you didn't know, these are transaxles. Corvettes are fully fiberglass, and they have transaxles in the back, meaning the transmission sits in the rear. It's around a 45-55 or 50-50 weight distribution. It's not quite 50-50, but it's almost there, and, well, let me tell you, it drives really good. Now, it's still winter in Wisconsin, but the streets are clean, so we can actually take it for a drive. This is also the other thing that makes the base models and the Z06s or the fixed roof coupes a little separated. There's usually a Targa panel here, and as you can see here, this is all one shape for structural rigidity. They're also made versions of this car that didn't have the performance upgrades, which makes no sense to me. Those non-Z06 fixed roof coupes sell for as much as a Z06 sells for, and you don't get the horsepower benefits. Yes, there weren't that many of them made, but I would argue that this is way more desirable, fun to drive, and better to own than just one of the fixed roof coupes that isn't a Z06. It was kind of made to be a luxury version of the Z06, but it's a sports car. Why would you want a luxury version of it? It's not like the Z06 is an extreme compromise. I drove this car like 6 hours. I didn't really have any issues. Now this was GM in the early 2000s, and you get the key from a Chevy Silverado, but taking a look at the trunk, this is a very, very deep trunk you get here. Now, in the normal cars, this rear glass would be a lot larger and the whole thing would come up, but since it's the fixed roof coupe, this trunk opens up completely separate from the rear glass, which is a little odd. But there's just so much space back here, and it's in such an odd shape. Yeah, you can see all the way through. It's so weird. I don't really know how to feel about that. Now, this is GM in the early 2000s, plastic interior, but it's about everything around that that really matters and the reason why these cars count. So what do you say we take it out for a short little drive and really talk about what it's like to drive? And that's the biggest reason I bought it. Under the center console, you have a lock, you have all your weird control panels there. This car is equipped with a HUD, but that's the one thing that I'm seeing doesn't work. And you have a bunch of weird buttons on the side here. Seats that say Z06 on them, and they're actually really comfortable. When it comes to the inside, it says Corvette there, and you have a weird grab handle there. This car is weirdly shaped. Definitely weirdly shaped. But it's all original. This car is bone stock original. And if we come here and stick the key into the dash, not into the column, but into the dash, and turn this over, we get Z06 there, Corvette logo there, and it's like a checkered flag pattern, which is really cool. But if we come over and I click trip here, suppose I have to close my door. I come here and click trip. This car only has 34,612 miles. And that is insane. The car for the money is insane. It's crazy. 405 horsepower, LS6 manual. I mean, I don't really need to say much. Let's turn the car on. Let's take it for a short drive. Oh yeah. It's quiet, but it sounds good. You do get memory seats in the car, the mirrors, but all of these buttons are rubbery. And that's kind of the downfall of this car, is most of this stuff stops working after a while. But in this car, nearly everything is functional. And here you have the controls for the HUD, and I believe that has to be adjusted a little bit, which is what I hear annoying, or I'm just not properly doing it. We'll figure that out and see what needs to be done. I'll probably end up taking it to the Chevy dealer to do an oil change on it anyway and run it through, and we also need to wash it because, well, I did a long drive on it. But before we wash it, I want to take it out for a little short drive. Now, driving the Z06 is kind of like driving no other car I've really driven before in the past. It has the weird kind of 1-2 shift thing for eco mode. So instead, if you shift it at the wrong RPM or the right RPM, basically, it wants you to skip into 4th gear. Super weird. But also, you have these bubbles in the hood that you can't really see. Like right there, you can kind of see the outline of that hood. And it's super hard to see on camera, but it feels like a fighter jet. That's the best way I can describe the feeling of driving this car. It's nothing like I've quite driven before in the past. It's such a weird driving experience. It makes a lot of noise, and that is very common. The motor makes noise, there's a transaxle, there's a lot of moving things around you that make a lot of noise. And that's completely normal, and just how these cars are. And it's a very odd experience. You know, the Miata makes a lot of noises, but it makes a lot of chatter that they're not supposed to do. This just makes noises because it's supposed to make noises. Just slightly opening it up. That's 35 miles per hour. It sounds so good. Outside, you don't hear this car with the stock exhaust, but on the inside with the stock exhaust, it sounds pretty mean. 2nd gear. I mean, you can hear that motor behind you, and handling, yup, she handles extremely well. Now, I've never been the biggest Corvette guy in the past. I ordered a C8 Z06, and I kind of got scammed on that, so I didn't really want a Corvette, but the C5 Z06, I kept seeing it for the last 8 months or so, and I was like, this car just shouldn't be that cheap. And I just said, you know what? I'm gonna take the risk. This is like the biggest financial risk I've taken in a while, just because values are very uncertain, the economy is very uncertain. But one thing that I'm really confident about is the value of this car. And Corvette people and a couple of people that I just talked to about cars in general agree with me, saying it's a good buy for the price that they're currently sitting at. And I wouldn't say that I paid like a steal for the car. I would say I paid a couple $1,000s under what the car should be. And at the same time, there's so much upwards potential. As far as how long I want to keep the car, I'm not actually sure. I kind of just bought it and I wanted to experience it. And financials aside, I mean, I just wanted to have a Corvette and I thought it'd be interesting. Like, it's not like the Corvette was always my dream car, but when I was younger, the Corvette at the time, especially the C5 and the C6, were kind of like the cars other than like the high-end Ferraris and stuff. Like, back in the early 2000s, these were just so cool. Like, these were like the cars. I don't know, Corvette culture out here near Road America in Wisconsin is pretty big. A lot of the older guys bought these cars. Now some of the older guys are finally starting to sell them. This is a one-owner 34,000 mile car, and they're like 40 grand off of the MSRPs. So we'll see. I definitely can't wait to experience it a little more. It's not going anywhere for the near future, but come towards the middle of summer, end of summer, I might look to move on because there is a certain car that I've been looking at. I told you guys I'm not hiding it. I would very much like to have a GT350, and well, a car that I can't lose on like this just in the meantime to hold me over for a few months is kind of the reason I bought it. Other than that, that's really all I have. Make sure to check out some videos on the RX-7 because rotary life, and well, maybe we rotary swap the Corvette. Yep.